Hello. We will finish Road to Super Bowl with episode 32. And who else but the evil empire, the Chiefs. The beast that has been humiliated, that has been hurt. Now it's pissed off. And it's a team that won 15 games last year. Don't ask me how. I don't know. There was a combination of Mahomes doing Mahomes things, Spags having probably the best defense situationally in the regular season, and some unhinged luck that manifested in blocked field goals, bad snaps, some questionable decisions. I see you, Bengals, and others. But if you think that this team is going anywhere, that Mahomes, Reed, and Spags are not guarantees for this team to be freaking dangerous, that I have a bad news for you. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. And the beasts are the most dangerous. Exactly when you heard them. Remember last time they have been humiliated in the playoffs? The draft that they have after that? Oh my god. And for you guys out there who hate the Chiefs, I have bad news for you. I really like that draft. And for me, I don't particularly like the Chiefs, nor do I necessarily hate them. My relationship to them is like similar to LeBron James or Cristiano Ronaldo. Not a huge fan. I think Messi is better. I think Jordan is better. I would take Kobe over LeBron in terms of like just how much I would root for a guy. But at the same time, I cannot deny their greatness. And that's kind of the same with the Chiefs. I'm not rooting for them. It's not like Pat Mahomes is my favorite quarterback. It's not like I don't see some questionable call sometimes that makes me scream. But I just cannot deny their greatness. And it doesn't go anywhere. And the talk about Mahomes, being past his prime or like being overcome by the other guys, I get it. The stat production is not there. But trust me, he is still freaking elite. Now, with that being our last intro, which is making me kind of sad because it was one hell of a ride. I mean, we are not quitting as a quitting, but it's just this season of Road to Super Bowl is coming to an end. Well, with this intro being over me, let's find out what the Chiefs did in the draft that I actually liked. Spoiler alert. Well, it kind of absolutely started with Josh Simmons, who to me was the best tackle in this draft. And it counts Armand Mambu, counts Calvin Banks, you can count Will Campbell. To me, Josh Simmons is the best tackle in this draft. He obviously counts with a huge question mark. That's his injury. But in terms of like talent that I saw with this guy, I have him like half a grade above this guy. Like he's bottom tier good starter. I need to see what he's going to look like against pros. And I need to see him recovering from the injury, how he's going to be affected by that. And I would love this pick even if he was not available for them this whole freaking year. Because when is going to be the next time the Chiefs can reach on some guy like Josh Simmons? At the same time, there is obviously risk attached to it. If he cannot come back to what he was prior to the injury, he might be just a guy. We will see about that. But in terms of raw talent and in terms of like what he's done as a college player, to me, he was the best offensive tackle in this class. And getting him number 31, they just had to take that risk. I was quite surprised that someone else did not jump them, taking chance on Josh Simmons. I don't know. And especially given the fact that he kind of has been cleared for the whole camp. Seems like he's been just absolutely okay, recovering, and everything seems to be right. And as of right now, he's even supposed to be a starter in week 1 based on their depth chart. So, I don't know. Perhaps, learn and don't give great players towards Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, one common team that was with the end of the first round when like the best teams from previous years are picking, I'm like, they just like Malachi Starks to the Ravens, Chad Campbell to the Eagles, Josh Simmons to the Chiefs. I mean, what the hell? What the freaking hell? How are the teams that are already freaking rich as hell with talent, how are they getting top 10 talent players, regardless of position, of course, in this entire draft? Like, to me, like at worst top 15 when you talk about Simmons, Jihad, and Malachi Starks. And like, if it would be, well, those especially in like everything like kind of makes sense because safety, linebacker, not necessarily position you value so much. And with Josh Simmons, it's injury attached. Yeah, I get that. But the thing is, what could piss you about this is more is like maybe those are not necessarily positions of the most value, but at the same time there were positions that those teams freaking needed, especially with the Malachi Starks to the Ravens and Josh Simmons here. And Jihad Campbell was just too freaking good to pass on for the Eagles and Vic Fangio, and trust me, Vic is going to unleash him. So it was like I had it for several of these teams, like richer, yeah, rich get richer. Now, it doesn't end there for the Chiefs because Amon Normalot is absolutely a guy that could give them much needed pass rush from the interior, someone that could get after the quarterback, and is not named Chris Jones. So they definitely need this guy. He does have an upside to be there too potentially, and this was a nice value for them. Like, this was kind of the range that I had him go, but the fit is very nice and the need is also there. So to me, A-. Ashton Gillette, very, very solid pick. Nothing like sensational about it in my eyes, but just a very nice find. And you clearly see the team with them boosting the lines. Exactly the same thing they've done last time they got embarrassed in the Super Bowl, and first 3 picks are about that. They are pretty much reacting to what happened to them in the Super Bowl. Well, we didn't have tackles, so Joe Tooney needed to play tackle. Okay, so let's draft Josh Simmons. Well, we couldn't get to the quarterback. Let's draft defensive linemen. Now, we struggled with coverage in some aspects. Let's add like 6 nice corner towards our already stacked room that perhaps has one top player in Trent McDuffie, but we lack that second superstar that could cover AJ Brown. Well, let's take a guy with upside. And, just because we can, and because we are Chiefs, there is a value receiver waiting for us so we can be more dynamic as a passing offense. Like Jalen Riles, Noah Williams, really nice picks, nice value. Jalen Riles, to me, like round and a half. There's need for him, especially with like how the receiving core is like very, very depleted. You have Hollywood Brown with questions about the injury, again, unfortunately. You have Juju Smith-Schuster, who can't stay healthy. You have Xavier Worthy, who had a lot of off-season drama. And you have Rashee Rice, who had a lot of off-season drama and is coming back from injury. So, at some point, it might be actually a case that for week 1, somehow, some way, their wide receiver trio is Jalen Ross, Tyquan Thornton, and Jason Brownlee, I guess, because all of the 4 guys that they have 1 to 4 on the depth chart have several issues, whether it's with the police or with the injury. Now, not really going into details, not sure how the league is going to handle that, but I would be surprised, for example, if Rashee Rice did not get some ban eventually, with how much has been made about him in the public. So we will see how that's going to end up, but with that, drafting Jalen Riles with a nice value in terms of where he should have been drafted in my eyes, which back end of the round 3, absolutely fine. As high as 70 to 75, getting him 1 for 3 is very, very nice. Rashard Smith, a guy a lot of people would take as the biggest steal. To me, he is just a nice steal because he's a very dynamic running back and he could give them something that they don't necessarily have. Again, they are lacking the explosive plays. They are lacking the big plays that were stable of this offense with Tyreek Hill. Rashard Smith and Jalen Ross can give it to them from wide receiver and running back spot and are both nice throws that could actually be a creation of some new offensive weaponry for Pat Mahomes in future years. At the same time, will Rashard Smith necessarily have a big role this year? I don't necessarily see that. It's Isaiah Pacheco contract year. You also still have Kareem Hunt coming back and like looking quite decent last year. They brought Elijah Mitchell, but after this year, only Carson Steele, who like is kind of RB5 and a nice story with I think it was Alligator last year, and like he can do some stuff. But neither of the running backs ahead of Brashard Smith has a contract, and they are spending the whole of around like 6 million for their starting 5 running backs, or like 7. So Brashard Smith has a big chance, and for a 7-rounder, he could be quite a nice impact, pretty much from 2026 going forward. This was the draft, one of the better ones, definitely in the top 10. Some would argue top 5, and I would not be against that. Chiefs got better after this draft, significantly. At the spots they needed to get better, so it doesn't get much better than that. In which state does this draft and the free agency leave their roster? So we start with offensive line, because that's a source of a lot of question marks, a lot of promise, a lot of free agents movement, a lot of draft, a lot of trade. So what they have done, they traded away Joe Thuney, and I get it. You had to decide pretty much Joe Thuney or Trey Smith, and they have ended up paying Trey Smith, which makes sense. Still, losing Joe Thuney, it freaking sucks. And as of right now, as his replacement on the depth chart by ESPN, it's Mike Caliendo. And like, what? I mean, I get that he kind of come out of nowhere and played solidly for them, but as your starter, really? After the whole of season, this is what you are coming with? I mean, obviously those are not like the final depth charts, and it might change, but they don't necessarily have too many options, because the second guard that was presumably starter, at least in my eyes, that they would try, that was Kingsley Suamataia, who busted out as a tackle last year, so they're like, okay, let's switch him to guard. And it seems like he has not beat Mike in the camp. Well, it could be a good thing that Mike is actually showing good promise, but he was he was like undrafted, he's 28, didn't show much in his NFL tape, so, my realistic self would be like, well, it's more about the competition rather than Mike Caliendo actually looking great. So this spot is a huge question mark, and I would be looking, if I were Chiefs, for someone. Whether it's through release, whether it's through some trade. I would not entrust this job to Mike Caliendo. If they do, and Mike looks great, nothing but the best for him. Like for an undrafted guy, let's secure it back. let's put your best. If he's good, more for him. I would not have it against him at all. But this worries me. Like Kingsley, Hunter Nurzat, who is much more of a center, there is just not much more depth after this. So I guess you can play with it when you have Creed and Trey Smith next to this guy, but their trio of Thuney, Humphrey, and Smith was low-key one of the best things that this team had going for them. Now you are, losing Thuney and replacing him with Caliendo. Interesting. Let's say interesting. But they were like, well, we need to fix our tackles. And not only did they drafted Simmons, who as of right now actually took a left tackle job, which is not surprising because to me he's really great. But they also invested quite heavily in free agency on Jalen Moore. And I don't know, from what I saw, this guy is, close to decent starter, but replaceable level starter that did not do much for the 49ers. And to pay this guy around 15 million a year, I don't know, like it almost felt like I would rather have Dan Moore for 20 million, which are not the words that I would expect to say, like, ever. Now, let's be fair to the Chiefs. They've done this prior to the draft. There was no guarantee that Josh Simmons is going to be there for them. But I'm like, is there that much of a difference between Ryan Morris and Jalen Moore? I mean, I would argue Jalen Moore is better, yes, but not that much. And to really pay like 15 million a year for that, I mean, I would actually say that there was a way for you to keep Joe Tooney if you have not paid Jalen Moore. And, perhaps that would require one more cut. It was like saving 5 or 7 millions out there, but boy, oh boy, would I rather have Joe Tooney and, perhaps cutting, let's take a look who would we cut for 7 millions. I don't know. Okay, perhaps Hollywood Brown. Or who's there? I'm not bringing Christian Fulton. I like Christian a lot, so perhaps not that. But they would still probably have the money to do it anyway. I mean, yeah, this one was like, I don't get it. And to this day, I'm like, yeah, my grade has not changed. This was one of the most surprising deals in the offseason. And, to a degree, they sacrificed Joe Tooney for this insurance policy that, if they cannot get Josh Simmons or if Josh Simmons is not ready to play, as of right now, they will have $15 million backup on their bench. So, okay, way to go, Chiefs. I guess good for everyone else. I don't know, man. Nothing personal against Jalen Moore, but this made no sense. Now, Vanya Morris, of course, do you want Vanya Morris protecting Patrick Mahomes for 18 weeks? Hell no. But I would argue the same thing about Jalen Moore. So, at least they are kind of tackle deep. Jalen Moore and Vanya Morris both can play. They're kind of good backup to replaceable level starter. And yeah, that's good. And you also have Kingsley Suamataia, who, if his guard experiment did not work out, perhaps we can switch him back to tackle. I don't know. So yeah, some questions. It's not necessarily questions about the starting lineup, because with Josh Simmons, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, you are set up. But in Mike, we talk about it, and it's more like, why is 15 millions a year sitting on a bench? Now, on the right tackle, Jawan Taylor, and I'm not a huge fan of this player. I think it's reflected in my rankings, which I would say probably a lot of people would have him at least as a good starter, which when you have player getting 27.3 million a year as a right tackle, you should be at least freaking amazing, not good. So this was another misstep. Like, they clearly tried to fix this situation, but it seems like they are just shoveling themselves into the deeper holes. I mean, I'm not saying Jawan Taylor cannot play, and he's definitely much closer to good starter rather than to good backup. But I mean, if the refs were more prudent, he would have 30 freaking penalties. Well, I'm talking obviously about his full start, and even with that advantage that he gets, and with a huge body frame, what is it that he's doing really good? He's good pass blocker. I give him that. He might be top 10 pass blocking right tackle, solid, and in terms of run blocking, okay, around top 18 right tackle in the league, but for 27.4 million. Wow, what a freaking number. I feel like after this year they can cut him and save 20 millions on the deal for next year. I would be shocked. I would be really, really shocked if he's on the roster for next year. As of right now, he's kind of their fourth or third best piece, depending on how you feel about Josh Simmons, and definitely how Josh Simmons will look after injury, because there is obviously a chance that Josh Simmons just do not recover well in terms of how he's able to come back on the pitch, maybe on the field. Sorry, I'm watching baseball. I was watching baseball prior to this. Maybe he just is not the guy he was prior to the injury, and he might bust out. That's a potential for Josh. That's a risk. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's definitely a risk. So Jaman is kind of stable for nothing super bad, but for $28 million player, hell, nothing to be excited either. And behind these guys is Patrick Mahomes. I would say still the most clutch quarterback, at least in the league right now. And when you actually look at what he had to work with, it's kind of a shell of Travis Kelce for several weeks at least to start the season. Xavier Worthy as a rookie, Rashee Rice injured, Marquise Brown injured, offensive line that could not protect from tackles. running game that was like rejuvenated by Kareem Hunt from the bench. Like, I get why his production dipped. And still, when it mattered, when it was the key downs, he delivered. So I understand when you want to put numbers, he didn't have like nowhere near a season that Lamar and Josh had. I get that. But this dude is still freaking elite. Don't give me any crap about that. And truth to be told, if you can take a quarterback, like to give you a winning drive or to deliver on the key down and distance, would you take anyone but Pat Mahomes? I mean, don't count like 4-1 and tush push. Yeah, I would take Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen for that. Probably Jalen Hurts because they seem to not be able to work that out in Buffalo somehow, some way. But Pat is still great. Again, he's by far not my favorite player. But I cannot deny his greatness. And neither should you, I think. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at what he will have to work with. So let's start with running backs, because Isaiah Pacheco is an interesting situation. Like, his earnings are like kind of ridiculously cheap. It's like $3 million altogether prior to this year, because he was like a 6th or 7th rounder, and he's not signed for next year. And he started to show some decline. He was injured, not for the first time, and it's like, it's just such a shitty thing, in a way, how this business works, where this dude that, like was semi-responsible for, at least one Super Bowl ring with the way he was running. I think it was in 2023 or 22, not sure, but like he damn well dragged them. Like I love him when he's playing. I like the quote that he runs like he wants to punish the ground. Unfortunately, after the injury, it was not quite there. But at the same time, like on his position, he might just kind of vanished. Like, he's taking a lot of punishment. He's not a highly drafted guy. With this running style, it's not necessary that, you are not taking dips by the injuries or by the contacts. And, we've seen something like that for a lot of running backs that kind of came out of nowhere, helped their team to really nice successes, and then just kind of disappeared. No real money like earned for them. Okay, like obviously he earned like after taxes like 1.5 million. I'm not saying that's something to scoff at. That's more than I have ever earned. I get it, but comparing to like what every other guy on the roster pretty much gets, it's sometimes it could not be fair. So I really am interested what is going to look like for Isaiah Pacheco. It looks like he's going to play on this contract. There is no holdout, at least from what I've seen. It's a little bit interesting that in a way he's betting on himself, because I'm pretty sure that if he just came to the Chiefs and was like, guys, 2 more years, 6-7 millions, give me that, this would be money that would secure him for his life, at least like if he has like good money management, for sure. But he would be protected from injury. At the same time, if he has another year that he had prior to this one, the market for him could be around 8-10 millions perhaps, depending on how much we will value running back in next free agency, because it goes up and down. So it's interesting that Chiefs are not trying to kind of lowball the offer, because at worst case scenario you have kind of your pissed number 2 guy for $3 million, which is like, okay, or he can be a really nice value. Or whether it's like Pacheco saying, no, I want to bet on myself. Interested. I hope it works out for him, and he gets the bag to a degree at least, because I think he deserves it and he earned it for the Chiefs in my eyes. But the league is not necessarily fair business, and I get that, and it's in a way fine. Like, life is not fair either. So Isaiah, I'm rooting for you, but we will see. With him, without him, Kareem Hunt had really nice year last season, kind of from the couch, actually, like not looking super far from his best version, which was impressive, especially given that the O-line play was not necessarily excellent, like beside the interior three. And like he's 30, he still can do it, and he's fighting for yet another couple of mils in next off season. So this is a solid duo. Prior to last year or like after 2022, I would say this has the potential to be a really impactful duo. So right now, I think it's a good room. It's nothing to write home about. And if Isaiah continues to look like he did when he came back from the injury, it might actually be kind of a room that could be a low-key problem, because there is no certainty that Kareem Hunt can still do it. And to put everything on like Brashad Smith, 7th-round rookie, I like his talent, but there is obviously no certainty either. So definitely monitor closely this room. Now, in terms of weapons, we already talked, like, they are solid when you can play them, but can you? Will you? It's going to be a whole different ball game. Xavier Worthy, as a rookie, he showed a lot of nice flashes. At the same time, like, he did not necessarily destroyed all the expectations like guys like BTJ, Lad McConkey, not counting Malik Neighbors and Marv, who didn't have necessarily the best year, but still very solid. There were some uglier games, especially earlier in the year, but he kind of became their biggest target. Not that he is the biggest, but their main target when the playoff was arriving, and he had some good games. He also had, or even great games. He also had a dumb-headed mistake. I think there was some weird penalty that he caused, but yeah, I think you feel absolutely good about Xavier Worthy, and you just hope that everything that's happening off the field, he's going to learn from that, and there is not going to be ongoing mess with him. I don't know the exact details, but the fact that things are surfacing, again, innocent until proven guilty. That's my policy for sure. At the same time, you just hope it's whatever was or is not going to happen again, and it won't haunt him kind of forever. So that's kind of hope for the Chiefs. If he's on the field, I think he is solid too. As of now, with potential to be really nice too. I don't necessarily see him as this top guy, but as a complement to your game and a guy that's going to attack 1,000 yards every year and gives you a lot of explosive plays that you need and Patrick needs. And this offense, quite frankly, started to lose pretty much every since they traded Tyreek Hill. Yeah, that's definitely Xavier Worthy in potential. Rashee Rice, another interesting story. What is it going to be off the field? How he's going to recover from injury? And, if everything goes right, he's another nice too. Again, not necessarily a guy that I do expect to have that elite or close to elite potential. So if these guys are at their max, which to me is kind of mid-level amazing starter, you are absolutely not worried about your starting two. You definitely are worried because A, they are not there, and B, they might not be there for you for some parts of this year. Behind them, Marquise Brown, we did not get to see his explosiveness next to Pat Mahomes because he got injured in the preseason, or perhaps even earlier. So they kind of run it back for reasonably cheap contract, and we will see how this is going to work. I felt this was fine. But it's been a couple of years since we've seen Marquise Brown really making an impact. So we will see how another injury is going to have an effect. Now, to the guy that was kind of hard to judge where he's at. That's Travis Kelce, of course. Because if I was to judge him based on his Super Bowl performance, I don't know. He looked washed. He looked slow. He looked like he kind of did not care, which was so freaking surprising given that if they won, I do believe it would have been his last game. So perhaps it kind of dawned on him that it's not going to be, and he kind of switched off. I don't know. Weird. Also, he definitely did not look like his former self, especially early in the year. So kind of a weird season. Definitely shown sign of regress. But this is most likely his last year. And I think he has that mentality that he wants to come out on top. So, if he was not going to try to go on top, I'm like, why would he be coming back? Because He's dating a superstar. He has shit ton of money. His podcast with Jason is not only funny, but great in terms of viewership, etc. So he has like everything going for him outside of football. Why would you want to come back if you did not feel like you still can put up elite performances, and you want to like go out on your own terms, on the top of your game, not after that performance? So like, I understand that there is a lot of worry how he's going to look like, but like from mental standpoint, I cannot imagine him not putting 1000% into this, because if so, it just makes no sense to me. Like, I don't think doing it for financials is just, it just doesn't make sense. Like, we will see. Maybe I'm wrong on this take, but I actually think Travis will look at the best version of himself that can be possible on the field. How good that version is, I don't know. Might be enough to come back to an elite tier, or is the age just there, hits are there, and it's perhaps just even imported starter, or even something slightly worse than that. We will see. The good thing is they have Noah Gray, who is kind of a very solid tight end, who I think on like 8 to 10 teams they could have considered him as 1A to like a 1B. Here he is a backup to Travis, and a guy that secretly is just waiting for Travis to retire and to take over. But he can definitely play it next to Travis. They can go with 12 personnel, and especially if there are some problems with Rashee Rice, Marquise Brown, Xavier Worthy, I would expect them to tap into that even more. Now, it depends on Jalen Royals and how he's kind of catching up into the speed. But a very, very solid player. And is this the last year of his deal? Or no, I believe they prolonged him. That was actually a smart deal. I think they've done it last year. 3 years, 18 millions, very smart deal for Noah Gray. That's why it surprises me that they have not prolonged Isaiah Pacheco, where like his position right now would be the one that I think Chiefs could leverage. So I'm surprised they have not re-signed him. Now with the backups, you have Jalen Royals, you have Juju Smith. In terms of tight ends, they have Robert Tonyan, Jared Riley. Not really great room. So they kind of need Travis Kelce to be back. Otherwise, that room, kind of lacks depth, and it's not great. In terms of wide receivers, you go like 5 deep. It depends how you feel about Tyquan Thornton, but at the same time, there is way too many question marks for you to say like 5 deep is good enough for this group as of right now. So a little bit of question marks in terms of depth for the weaponry other than running backs. Where in terms of running backs, I think they are set for this year, and with some questions for next year. In terms of backup quarterback, Gardner Minshew for 1.2. Oh my God, sign me up! Like, hell yeah! Like, this is definitely a guy that can win you a game. If you like flip a coin good way, there is like a swagger about him, and like him for 1.2. That's an outrageous deal. Like, I'm like really wondering why he took this job, but it's like, well, ring is a ring. I want to go where I have the most chance, which I understand that. Or it's like, I'm still just 29, 30. Let's just learn from the best, or one of the best to ever do it, in Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes, and see where, next year perhaps some QB needed team could look for a bridge. And I'm like, okay, guys, I have done it. I've just started with Pat Mahomes. Perhaps we won a Super Bowl. Let's pay me up. I don't know. Interesting signing, but definitely a nice value for the Chiefs. So where does this leave the Chiefs offense? With question marks. Mike Caliendo starting. Josh Simmons, I hope that he's going to be the answer. I hope he's going to be the guy prior to injury, but you don't know that. You definitely have question about like eligibility for your wide receivers, and like there's not necessarily high-end talent. And you do have a question with Travis Kelce and Isaiah Pacheco, like, will they look like what they did in Super Bowl or like games prior to that in Pacheco's case? Then there is just Patrick, do your magic. Also, there's a positive spin. If Travis comes back, because he's freaking motivated. Jalen Royals is as good as we think he could be, even as a rookie. And Marquise Brown, Juju can stay healthy. Rashi and Xavier Worthy are going to get like 2 games man or even something less. Kareem and Pacheco are still looking good, and you have Brashad Smith, to complement them. And you can figure out the guard spot, which, all of those things are definitely possible. This could, again, be probably not top offense, but fighting for top 7, top 5, something like that with Mahomes, with the reins. And obviously, you have freaking Andy Reid and Matt Nagy. So for what it's worth, like Matt Nagy as your OC, that's a good damn OC. Though it's like Andy Reid's job, but I understand Bears fans are not huge fans of Matt Nagy, but for an OC, I really feel like there is a lot of good qualities about him. So this was Chiefs offense. Now let's take a look at their defense. And it's highlighted and starred by Chris freaking Jones. This dude is insane. This dude is literally insane. And if there was a question who is the best defensive player, I would still go Myles Garrett. Number 2 would be Chris Jones. And number 3, I would probably have Sexy Dexy, aka Dexter Lawrence. But Chris Jones is freaking insane. Similar to Joe Thuney, because they struggled to generate pass rush, he was actually lining up outside. Like, he was playing all over goddamn line just to find the matchups and freaking punish them. He was nasty. And like, the sack numbers might not be there, but the way you have to handle him with double teams, the way he's going to push the quarterback into the hands of other guys that are rushing the passer, especially George Karlaftis, which I actually like this duo because George to me is like high effort guy. Chris Jones is disruptor, so they are meshing well together. And I think it shows on the numbers and perhaps make Karlaftis look a little bit better than he actually is. So he's definitely like a low-end important starter in my eyes. But these 2 guys are like incredible one, and either one of the best 3s or low end 2 in terms of your pass rush and in terms of ability to like provide in terms of defensive line. After that, Mike Pennell, solid rotational defensive tackle. Not a guy that you should be starting in my eyes. He's probably going to be rotating with Jerry Tillery and Omar Normal, where like with Omar, we talk about the potential for him to be another disruptor from the interior, generating pass rush, and like next to Chris Jones. That would be nice. Is necessary Mike Pennell a nose tackle that would allow them to really play next to each other, or is it going to be more about like when Omar is out there, Chris might line up outside and try to something like that? I actually think it's the other, but like rotational guys, not necessarily number 2 that you would be like, yeah, he's the guy that sets the floor. So that's something that they obviously hope with Omar Normalat they can have. But definitely one thing that, for example, with Dexter Lawrence, I was so freaking happy that they got Darius Alexander, because finally he has a number 2 guy next to him as defensive tackle, which those guys are lacking for several years actually right now. And I don't get it. Like, when you have such a freaking force, multiply the advantages you are getting by actually giving him a reasonable counterpart. So in terms of interior, Chris Jones, and yeah, not much to speak of, and question of how good is going to be Norman Lott. Now, in terms of edge, they re-signed Charles Omenihu. It's like solid rotational player, kind of your 4, low end 3. But here he kind of is there too. They also have Mike Dana. Like, they probably are in competition for the like rotational spot, who is going to be lined up most with George Karlaftis on the other side. There is also highly drafted Felix and Udike Uzoma, who just do not seem to necessarily grasp it out, and like decent starter is really more towards like a sticking with what he's done in the college rather than him necessarily breaking out. So George Karlaftis is good. After him, there are a couple of rotational players that are solid, but Chris Jones go down, and this defensive line is kind of ass. Now, we saw that very, very similar with Khalil Mack and the Chargers, with Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals. I wonder how long they can get away with this, but as long as Chris Jones is out there, yeah, they can get away with it, especially with Steve Spagnuolo actually skimming it up. In terms of guys that I don't have here, Ashton Gilotti, drafted this year, Jerry Tillery, interesting veteran at this point, which is like, it does not feel a long time ago where he was like, yeah, Jerry Tillery is like first round pick to first round bust, and then it's like, well, he's now a 6th-year vet, so what do you know? So they're going like 7 deep, which is absolutely fine and more than a lot of defensive lines can speak of. So solid, but in terms of high-end talent, depends how much you like Jerkel. After this, you have to love Chris Jones. After that, it's going to be a lot of it is going to be on specs, to just use different skill set, rotate them, keep them fresh, and just make them solid so Chris Jones can freaking deliver. And the hope is, next to George Karlaftis, you will have Omar Norman-Lott to be a nice companion for those two guys. Now, after that, linebacker room is nasty. Yet, I was actually highly critical of the resigning of Nick Bolton. And that has just one simple reason. And that reason is, you have Leo freaking Chanel. I do understand you can play all of them on the field. You don't necessarily do it as often. That would justify, in my eyes, paying Nick Bolton this amount of money. Is he worth this money in vacuum? Hell yes. Absolutely yes. But if I could make a choose, I could have Nick Bolton, or they would get some compensatory pick for him. So Nick Bolton and Jalen Moore, or compensatory pick for Nick Bolton and around like 8 millions and Joe Thuney. Like, what are we talking? And this is nothing against Nick Bolton. I think he's absolutely worth this money, and he is a great freaking player. But you have Leo freaking Chanel. Like, why? Yes, he's the leader, he's the captain. I get all of this. But is this really smart to pay? It's not necessarily like top market money, but like, let's say fair contract to the position that is not necessarily super highly valued around the league, and to the position where you have a successor in place. Also, sorry, Nick Bolton is not wide receiver. I'm sorry, he's obviously linebacker. You have successor in place, and you just like, because of that, you let go Joe Thuney, you trade Joe Thuney. Like, because partially, like, if you counter money for Nick Bolton and Jalen Moore, they could afford Joe Thuney for the next 2 years. They could absolutely do that. I would much rather have Joe Thuney, man. And again, nothing against Nick Bolton. I think on 15 teams, perhaps even more, he would be their clear number one disruptor. And like, quite frankly, he's absolutely a plus. Like, I get it why you want to keep him. He's a great player. He's leader, everything. But from roster building, I was not a fan of this move. So like, when a lot of people were talking about potential fall of the Chiefs, I was looking at their free agency, and I was not like really happy in terms of like, I questioned almost all of their moves, and I'm like, okay, maybe there is something. But then the draft came, so I was like, okay, nothing. They can absolutely overcome that, and I definitely think that. So he's kind of a luxury that I wasn't sure, especially at the time of free agency, that you can afford. Right now, with the way they handled draft, it looks much better for them. So, perhaps after the draft, this would go probably to C. Still would not do this deal. But in terms of Nick Bolton as a player, hell yeah, he's a hell of a player. Next to him, Drew Tranquil, this duo, and Lee Chanel, like, this is the best trio of linebackers. Like, nobody goes deep as Leo Chanel in terms of like linebacker free. In terms of duo, they would be top 10 easily. Like, those are both game-changing players, absolute pluses for you, and yeah, the guys that you are absolutely excited about. Now with Leo, like, his numbers are freaking ridiculous. The fact is, he just cannot get too much on the field because those two guys are just keeping him in the distance. Like, Leo, good boy, good boy. And one more comment on this. Like, this is Leo Chanel last year. What are you going to do with him? It's like, will you resign him to another premium money? Because in a way, he's earned it. Like 3 years, 30 million, something like that. if he hits open market, I believe there is going to be suitors that would offer even more, because every time he stepped on the field, he looked freaking awesome. He's great physically. He had like Drew Tranquil and Nick Bolton and Steve Spagnuolo to, soak knowledge from. Like, I think he could be sneaky 3-year, $50 million linebacker that's not even freaking starter, that someone will pay next year free agency, and actually will look good for it in the long term. Like, I'm a huge fan of Leo Chenal. And watch out. Like, really intrigued how this is going to play out, because he's not going to be worn out. He's going to be 26 or 25 and a half or something like that. Working with Spags, with Bolton, with Tranquil for so many years. I'm like, what more do you want? Like, if it's all about taking a chance on a guy that has traits, that has knowledge, that learned the position, and then when he actually played, he looked freaking awesome. Like, when Kenneth Murray can get like 2 years, 15 million last year, this dude should get 3 years, 50 million absolutely next year free agency. So I really wonder how the Chiefs are going to handle this. Whether there's going to be some trade with Leo Chenal, or they will let him go and get some compensatory picks. I wonder. But, if it was up to me, I would try to trade Nick Bolton, take him, trade him, do something about that, and probably try to secure Leo Chenal next year. Though depends like how much would he ask, because he's obviously less proven than Nick Bolton. We will see. We will definitely see, but something to monitor mostly after this year. For this year, they have special linebacker trio. And this leaves us to the final group of this Road to Super Bowl series, and that's the secondary of the Chiefs. Now, Christian Fulton, C+ is only there because, 10 million a year is not nothing, and Christian Fulton is good. He's not excellent. So it's an absolutely fine deal. It's not necessarily a value deal, which is what I'm reflecting in those grades. So, nice deal for Christian Fulton. I will rather recheck this, because I got burned on some of the contracts that I've written out in the names of free agency, and after that there was some void years added to it, etc. Now, you start with Trent McDuffie. This dude is freaking awesome, but he is freaking awesome as more of a slot guy rather than outside. Like, he can absolutely do it, but against the league's best, he didn't necessarily look the greatest out there. Yeah, I'm talking about Superbowl, of course, or even like the whole playoff run. So one of the things why I bring Christian Fulton is to give you more competition for outside. Though as of right now, at least ESPN has Trent McDuffie starting as a left corner, which would surprise me, at least a little bit, because I feel like the whole point of kind of stacking your cornerback roster, where you have Jamari Corner, Jalen Watson, Christian Fulton, and you also drafted Noel Williams. To me, the whole point is, let's put Trent McDuffie towards the position where he is the best, the dangerous, and that's slot. So interesting, that's where like the depth charts of ESPN might look definitely different from a GameNate depth chart. But in terms of their actual corners beside Trent McDuffie, I think it's a bunch of really solid players, definitely a low-end good starters, guys that in a way got exposed when they weren't necessarily matching up with the league's best. But like, there is like 5 or 6 of them, because you don't see Joshua Williams here, who's like, again, decent player. They are kind of like 6 deep in terms of corner. That's big, but also, there's talk about Jamari Corner actually playing safety, which, as of right now, he's listed as their strong safety on ESPN depth chart, so, that could be it for Jamari. And to play alongside Jaden Hicks, those could be their starters, though, again, ESPN has Brian Cook listed there. In terms of safeties, it's a room. You can definitely say it's a room. It's one that should not, like, drag you down, but it's definitely not going to lift you up. And when you talk about, they had some problems with secondary, it was not necessarily only perimeter guys, it was also the safeties, and they lost the guy criticized Saints for let's say overpaying, but he's not overpaid, but I don't think Saints should be playing anyone, Justin Reed. So they're going with a youth movement here. Again, I get it. You need to start with youth movement somewhere, and sometimes, but perhaps Justin Reed and Joe Tooney could be on one side of the board, and on the other you could have Nick Bolton and Jalen Moore, I know which side I would pick. At the end of the day, should the secondary be a problem for them? Definitely not in regular season. Do I see high enough talent that, if they need to face AJ Brown and the company, Devonta Smith and guys like that, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, D. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I think Christian Fulton and at least one of these guys kind of are fixing this problem. I really feel like this is not going to be an issue. If there's one area, it might be those safeties where they can step it up to be a good unit. But overall, I'm not worried about the secondary, and he has definitely potential to be top 7-ish. And right now I'd put them around 12, 11, 10, something like that. Really like these players. I think you have incredible depth that very few teams have, and yeah, they also pick up Jonas Sanker in the draft. They have Jordan Howden. I'm sorry. I was like, Jonas Sanker. What Jonas Sanker would be doing here? Sorry guys, I was switching to remember Justin Reed's name and did not put it back. So they have Mike Edwards. In terms of backups, maybe one more backup safety could come some way. But there are still a lot of guys unsigned that could be similar to Gardner Minshew for veteran minimum. I'm going to go and chase a ring and be a number 3 safety. Hell yeah. So Justin Simmons, I might be looking at you. Let's take a look, because safeties are still a lot of safeties are still unsigned, if I'm not mistaken. In terms of those that, at least in terms of names, are quite big. Let me check on that. Free agents. So guys, it's going to take just a second. This just piqued my interest. Available. So Marcus Williams is still available. Obviously he was very shit with Baltimore, but prior to that, prior to last year, we thought he was a top 15 safety. So, could you take a swing on him? Justin Simmons could come here for 3 to 4 million, trying to chase a ring. Other than that, I don't necessarily see a potential different makers. Perhaps Jordan Whitehead, not necessarily. So other than that, you have experienced veterans. Really, it would be about chasing the ring. Jordan Poyer, Marcus May, Von Bell, Rodney McLeod, guys that you don't want to necessarily see on the field, but give experience to this still very, very young secondary, and to at worst case scenario they can play some snaps for you. Why not? So with that being said, let's take a look at what I predict this team to do after we take a look at the depth. I already talked about it. A lot of it in terms of corners, in terms of safeties, not so much. So my prediction, was actually quite rocky. I had them the same record as the Chargers, though with Chargers and losing Russian later, it might go slightly down the net. And how would they get there? Well, it would start with D lineman showdowns. And boy, oh boy, week 1, Khalil Mack against Chris Jones. Week 2, Jalen Carter against Chris Jones. Week 3, Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, and the whole freaking defensive line of the Eagles versus Chris Jones. Week 4, it's only Justin Madubak. Week 5, Josh Hines-Allen. Week 6, Aiden freaking Hutchinson. Boy, oh boy, what are we doing? With showdown after freaking showdown. And it's going to be hard for the Chiefs to really pull through this, because those are not an easy games. And if they don't necessarily have the right answers, especially with Mike Aliendo, perhaps Rashee Rice and those situations, I'm not sure how they are going to get handled. I don't actually think they're going to start particularly well. So it's definitely daring to predict the Chiefs are going to lose the whole 3 games in the start of the year, but yeah, I'm actually doing that. Now, for the second part of the year, to me, the storyline was questions start to rise. If Travis Kelce is not looking like his former self, here is going to be really on the main focus, because even last year he did not look necessarily great at the start, but then came through his form and kind of shit the bed in the Super Bowl. But here it would be starting to, okay, Travis, what is going on? Where are you? If he's not packing his form by here, the questions will be through the roof. And when I look at the schedule, at Mile High, at Bills, hosting Commanders, I actually think they will drop a couple of games here as well. I predict them to be 3-2. And not only questions about Travis Kelce, but overall about Chiefs might start to rise, because they would be 6-5 by my prediction. But here comes Patrick Mahomes, because you had to piss him off. And Cowboys, Texans, Chargers, Titans, Broncos, and Raiders, I think that's 5-1, taking this division actually towards them, and we offered you a chance, you have not capitalized, it's our division. I do believe that in the end they will pull through, but this division is going to be interesting. It's such a shame that Wilkins, the relationships and his recovery screwed up with the Raiders, because I think this just puts way too much lack of talent for the defensive line beside Max Crosby for the Raiders to overcome. It's such a shame for the Slater and the whole Chargers team, but I'm excited. I'm excited about this division. It would be an epic one if it happened like I was predicting, but at one point it's Chargers, then it's Broncos, then it's Chargers again, and Chiefs. No, it's actually us. We will see how this one goes. On this note, thank you very much for listening to the whole 32 episodes. If you have missed some of them, you can obviously watch them. I have another shows coming. Some are already in production. You can see my Mad Lab, where I'm trying to really take a look what I would do on the sideline, what type of calls I would call, how crazy I would get with perhaps rotating Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, just to pique your interest. And the other one is between GM's eyes, looking from the perspective of GM rearranging or rethinking some of the major decisions that happened in this offseason. And when the season starts, it's going to be definitely focused on transfer deadline day. With that, thank you very much, and we will see you very, very soon, because, the season is just about to get started, and it's going to be freaking good fun. Enjoy it. Enjoy my content. I hope you do. Until we see you again, or I see you again. Sometimes I say I have my cats here, so perhaps they are looking at you. They are judging you. If you have not smashed the like button, they are judging you for sure. Now, have a nice day. Bye-bye.